Hello, critics. I'm Clayton Davis, Film Awards Editor at Variety. Thanks for joining us today for this Q&A of Over the Moon, and joined today by the director, Glen Keane. Glen, hello, and come on in.
Hello, Clayton. It's good to see you.
Hanging out, just going about the daily business of staying home still 7 months later, or however long it's been. How are you doing?
I'm kind of getting used to sitting in a chair talking to people on my laptop. It's going to be shocking when I actually see a real human face that I'm talking to. I can't
People
wait.
in 3D is pretty crazy. I'm telling you, like, it's been a while, and then when you see it, you're like, oh, like you're here. It's something different. But thanks for joining us today, and thanks for taking this time with us all. I've got a couple of questions for you. Just want to talk to you about, kind of the success. Congratulations on a fantastic movie.
Thank you.
Honestly, just really spectacular. First question out the gate to you is, why Over the Moon? Why now? And why for your first directorial efforts? First time you directed a animated film.
Well, in my career, I've always looked at characters that I want to bring to life. Really about living in the skin of the characters. So as long as there was characters that I wanted to animate, that I would just be animating and bringing them to life. And then there came a point where there wasn't a character that nobody was asking me to animate a character that I wanted to animate. It was like, I think now's the time I need to direct because I want to bring a character. That was Rapunzel. But that also happened to be at a time where Disney was going through a change of management and went through 3 different successive changes. And it took 5 years of going through that. Finally, I just moved from directing that to overseeing the animation. But that was it was a great training I had in that time. And then leaving Disney, it was directing shorter pieces. From Duet to Dear Basketball. And then Over the Moon happened in the most wonderful kind of a way. Sometimes you are auditioning for something and you don't even know it. That's the best, because then you are just completely you. Yeah. And so I was speaking at Annecy at the Film Festival in France in summer of 2017, and I just shared everything I love about animation in a talk I called Thinking Like a Child. Because as a kid, I love to play make-believe. Kids can make themselves believe. Mm-hmm. And so I talked about characters like the Little Mermaid and these characters that believe the impossible is possible. And that is like, I'm like a moth to flame to that. I can't resist it. In the audience was Melissa Cobb, who would become the head of Netflix Animation. She was not at that point. And Pei Lin Chow, head of Pearl Studios, and they had a script in their hands with a character exactly like that, with Fei Fei, who was the ultimate believe the impossible is possible. She was going to build this rocket to the moon to meet a goddess that nobody believes existed. And when I read that script, I just thought, I had another project that I was gonna develop, but when that one came along, I just thought, I have to do this. There's something so true and felt like me that I said yes.
Oh, awesome. I'm imagining, by the way, Pei Lin Chow walking around with a script in her hand, just all over the place, just like waiting to meet you in person, just to be handed off and be like, here, do it. It
kind of was that. Yeah.
Was that? Good. I like that. All right. We don't need to talk about that a little more. I'm always very passionate about what gets us into this industry, what gets us into this space. I mean, we love movies, we love everything. What is it about animation that gives Glen Keane life? Like, what is it about it?
Oh man. Well, let me just tell you a story. When I started in animation, I kept hearing from Walt Disney's 9 Old Men that particularly this one guy, Eric Larson, and he was kind of a grandfatherly sort of a guy and big belly. And I mean, if you got a big belly like that, you've got a choice. Where do I put my belt? You know, truck drivers wear it below. Gentlemen like Eric, he wore it above. And he would say, the secret of animation is sincerity. And it's like, okay, hanging on to that. And I got my first shot to animate, which was in the film The Rescuers. And I was animating, it was just a little shot of Bernard, this mouse, and he's sweeping the floor in the bottom of the United Nations building. And I was struggling with this. I mean, I thought I was single-handedly going to destroy Disney's reputation with this one shot. Okay. And finally, after 2 weeks, I mean, I was putting all of the sincerity I had into that. I mean, the pencil points were breaking off, hitting people in the head around me. You know, I couldn't get it. And I finally had to go in defeated to Eric's office and say, Eric, can you help me? I can't figure this sweeping action. And I thought he was going to give me some kind of a formula for that. And he said, well, Glenn, what kind of a guy is Bernard? I said, I don't know. What do you mean? Well, does he care about his job? I said, well, yeah, I guess he does. Well, of course he does. That's the kind of guy he is. This little guy wants to sweep up every little speck of dust off the floor. Don't you think? I mean, he puts his whole heart and soul into it. And he was going on about this little guy, and you could hear that Eric loved Bernard. And in an instant, this guy who was, you know, in his late 60s, maybe 70, who was not even the animator of the shot, within seconds, he was the character. And I realized that sincerity was make believe. And I knew that. I could not get out of that room fast enough to let me, I got it. And I never forgot that. That's been the thread for me, and everything I've done is to live in the skin, to believe in it. That's the joy. It is such a labor-intensive thing and requires so much training and study and observation. But it's the passion of becoming something that you can see and feel in your heart, and that's what drives me. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, I would like a Glen Keane story per day for. I need some of these more. Because that answer, I mean, that explained it perfectly. My last question to you before I have some questions that were submitted by our members here, and I think you might have touched on this a little bit. Can you recall and the reason I'm asking this is because Student Academy Awards were handed out today, and one of the students, who was an animator, when I interviewed her, gave such a profound answer when I asked her about how she got into animation, and she said, I realized that animation is a stylistic take on reality. And she was like 20 years old, and then I felt immediately intimidated because I was like, why are you so smart at 20? I was so stupid back then. What's going on here? But the reason I'm asking you this question now is, do you recall the moment of your life, that moment where you said, I'm doing this for the rest of my life? Do you remember what you drew? Can you recall that time?
Yeah, I do. Very clearly. I was just a little kid. And my dad, who was a cartoonist, he drew the family circus, and he worked at home, and I shadowed him everywhere. I'd go to the art store with him. I'd hang out at a friend's house way out in the desert. And he and this guy, Don Barkley, would drink beer, and I'd drink a root beer, and they'd smoke cigars, and I'd pretend I was smoking a big pretzel stick. But I was walking in his shadow. And at one point, Dad said, Glenn, I'm a cartoonist. You are an artist. It was the most profound moment. It was as if the sword went and knighted you on the shoulder. And he gave me a book called Dynamic Anatomy. I was just a little kid, but I started learning about the muscles and the figure and drawing. And I remember going to school on the school bus with my sketchbook and these figure drawings. And my friends came around and they looked at my sketchbook and they started to laugh. And they said, Keane's drawing naked guys. And everybody started laughing. And when you're that age and your friends are laughing at you because of what you do, you just don't do that anymore. And I was at that fork in the road. And because of that knighting from my dad, that kind of like, this is who you are kind of a moment, and my admiration for him, I heard them laughing. I thought, wow, they don't get it. I get it. I'm different. I like it. And I pursued that path for the rest of my life. I remember the drawing and I was showing them was the discus thrower, the Greek statue of the guy about to throw that. And then the other one was the thinker. They were both nudes. It was just like muscles. And that launched me.
And look, 15 years later, you're here now, right? Because you're 25 now, right?
That's right. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Got some questions from our critics that sent in questions ahead of time. So I'm going to ask for you. I'm also a voting member of Critics' Choice. So these are my fellow brothers and sisters in this place. And here we go. First one is from Nell Manow from moviemom.com. What are the most important factors you look for in character design?
Wow. Okay, so like here's a drawing of Feifei. That's one of like the design drawings of her. One of the things that you realize as you are designing a character is that they exist before you design them. It's a really weird thing. I would never have said that. Except that has been my experience as I design a character. Suddenly, like with the Beast, I had hundreds and hundreds of drawings of him, and my assistant came and said, "Well, what's he going to look like?" I don't know. He said, "What about that one?" It's like, no, it's not that. No, it's not. I don't recognize him. And then, but I said, but what I like is this buffalo head shape, and I started to draw him out. Talked about the lion's mane and the boar muzzle there, the tusks, and cow ears to make him a little friendlier. Anyway, the whole thing. And as I drew it, and I finally finished with the eyes, and I realized that's him. I felt like he was looking at me, and it's a revealing of the character, and that all I can say is that I recognize them, and that's how it's been for every one of these characters. And with Feifei, it was this combination in her eyes of intelligence. This is a girl who I knew it was about her thinking her way through things, figuring things out, science, math, physics, technology. And I wanted to see that intelligence, a spark. And then on the other side of it, though, was this faith, believing in what you don't see, that side of it that came from her mom. And so designing her was this intelligence in her eyes, using really very much an Asian eye shape. I wish I could just draw it for you. But there's this one really other element that I've just noticed has grown in the design, and that's the hair. It's like I'm making up for the lack of something in my life. I'm not sure what it is, but here's Rapunzel with this huge long hair. But the hair is a symbol of the struggle of the character. Her hair is about Rapunzel's was irrepressible, uncontainable. You can lock her in a tower and that hair is going to grow. Pocahontas was about the spirit moving in her. Ariel is this constant reminder she's floating in water, but she wants to walk on land. And how is this going to be possible? Tarzan's a wild animal with the dreadlocks. Fei, it's this chaos, this explosion that happened in her life, and her world turned upside down, and she cut her hair, and it's this constant reminder of that. That design choice dictated so much because the dominating power of that hair meant her eyebrows had to be really bold and strong, kind of like yours, Clayton.
Yeah. I try very hard.
Yeah. So anyway, those are some of the elements that came into the design of the character. And if you're going to make a mistake in the design, don't ever let it be in the eyes. That's the window to the soul, and it's so important.
Awesome. All right. Next question is from Dewey Singleton. Hello, Dewey. Friend of mine. From WHF Atlanta and Dewey'sMovies.com. Why do you feel the narrative of Over the Moon is seemingly resonating with so many people who have seen it?
I think it's because this is a story that none of us are immune from. I mean, whether you're a child or an adult, you recognize, wow, the one thing that we are all going to deal with in life is death. And I mean, there is no real villain in this movie, but if I was to name it, I would say it's death. It's loss, irretrievable loss. And how are you going to deal with that? And the only way that we deal with it, I think the power of this film is that there's a proverb that says something like the sorrows that we feel in our heart are unique to us, and the joys also can't be shared. They are personal. But when we connect to somebody else, when we see somebody else in pain, that's the key to unlock the pain. That Fei, seeing Chang'e, makes that choice to help her. Chang'e sees somebody else for the first time feeling what she felt, makes that choice to go over to help them. They both unlock each other. I think that's an incredibly important message. And Clayton, if I, is it Dewey? Is that his name?
Dewey. Yep, Dewey.
Dewey, I don't know if this is why you're asking that question about this year, this time we are in. But, you know, it's like Fei says, I just want things to go back the way they were. And we don't live life going back. We live it going forward through the pain, through the difficulty. And the wonderful thing about the coronavirus, if you could say that, is that we are all in the world experiencing it. And it goes beyond politics. It goes beyond culture differences. It goes beyond race. It goes beyond religion. We all share that painful time. And I think that it feels so fractured in the world in many ways. But I think that something really, truly wonderful is on the other side that's waiting for us.
Very, very well said. From Lynn Van Haas from Webster Kirkwood Times and KTRS Radio. You already touched on this, but please continue. Accepting death is a major part of the story. How did the screenwriter's death affect your perspective during filming? That's about talking about Audrey Wells.
Yeah, wow. I mean, we as a team, we went through loss, from Audrey to parents among our team to Kobe, who felt like he was part of our team. He'd come and visit while we were working on the movie. It was an incredible impact that losing Audrey had on us. And I'll never forget like the last conversation I had with Audrey was in my office. And it was just a few months before she passed away. And she couldn't really put her legs down. So she was stretched out on one side of the couch, her feet outward towards me, and I was sitting on the other side of the couch. So very much eye to eye, we're looking at each other. And she was helping me figure out, even at that point, how to weave these songs into her script, because she wrote it without the songs. And I needed to be able to incorporate them. And she was still working with us on that. And at one point, we started talking about Wizard of Oz. And I said, this whole journey of Feifei to the moon for the healing, that you've written into this, it's a dream that she goes and she comes back. And Audrey says, no, it wasn't. I said, what, so you think she really did go to and really saw Chang'e on the dark side of the moon? Well, yeah, don't you? I said, well, okay. Well, what about Dorothy going to Oz? And then she comes back, and I mean, that's a clear dream, right? No, it isn't. No, it wasn't. You think it was? And she just had this fire in her eyes, like deep belief. Like, I can make myself believe it, and I am going to you need to believe this, that it did happen, Glenn. And I just realized, wow, I will work so hard so that I do not fall on one side or the other. This will be a razor's edge. And you could believe it really happened, or you could say it is a dream. But I carefully wove that down that middle line. And the power of that conversation was, this was not a theoretical movie for her. This was weighty because it was a gift to her daughter. And to have you believe in the weight and the power and the truth of this story was not just a theoretical thing. It was like, you don't understand how important it is to me that this be real, because the lessons are real and deep. So, I think there's great power in that because of how meaningful it was, and how we took the baton. I felt like I had the baton in my hand from that meeting. And I used to run the relay in high school. So I guess I connect to that, and how you just are not going to drop that baton no matter what.
Oh, amazing. From Sammy Toronto, TV Grapevine. What was your favorite moment making the project?
Favorite moment? Oh gosh. Well, I guess this moment stands out to me because it was such an impossible thing to try to figure out artistically. Like in Wizard of Oz, you had black and white, go to Oz, and it's Technicolor. Like, how the heck are we going to do that? They already did it. Like, what is the equivalent of that for us? And my production designer, Celine Desrumeaux, when we were in China, we were walking around the streets in this little town, and she's got a great French accent. She said, "Glenn, look at the white walls." I said, "Yeah, those are white." "No, they're not white at all. They're blue and purple and brown and green." And she was just like, her eyes were fiery, and she saw light in such a beautiful, reflected way in this little Chinese town. And it made me think of the cover from the Pink Floyd album, Dark Side of the Moon. So I showed her that, and I said, "Celine, here's this prism of white light hitting that. And whatever we do in Lunaria has to be those rainbows colors coming out the other side. So I don't know how you're going to do it, but it's got to be that. And the day that she showed me Lunaria, based on Miro's artwork of floating spheres, and they're all glowing from the inside out, Lunaria would be the opposite of the Earth, where it's reflected light of the sun hitting the walls in this little tiny Chinese town, to source light coming out from characters that are born from Changa's tears, and the buildings glowing. Everything comes from this goddess. She's a real goddess. She creates this world. It exists because of her. She is the light. She's ultraluminary. Yeah. And when she showed me Fei standing in front of these buildings, this was a good year, maybe a year and a half into the production, trying to figure this out. And all I could do was laugh and cry at the same time. It was just like, I'd never seen anything so ludicrously beautiful.
I got one more question for you, because we're running out of time. There's so many that I want to think the best one. All right, let's give this to Lana Wilson Combs. Since you worked with the late Kobe Bryant on Dear Basketball, did the impact of that short manage to manifest itself in any way in Over the Moon, in terms of how you approached the story and presented it through the wide-eyed wonder of a child? As well, get it out there with a bang. Go ahead.
Yeah. With Kobe, he's such a remarkable guy. I mean, I have so much to say about this, but I'll try to make it short. But at one point, I told Kobe, I've downloaded your top 20 plays. And I was taught by my mentors, don't animate what the character's doing, animate what the character's thinking and feeling. You've got to tell me what you were feeling, because otherwise I can't animate you. And so we went through every one of those plays, and there was one particular play that was, there was like no time left on the clock, 1.7 seconds or something. It was a championship game. And they are 2 points behind, 3 points to win. Everybody's around Kobe. Everybody knows the ball's coming to him. The ball is thrown in. Kobe races out of the crowd, grabs the ball, racing as fast as he can to the side of the court, shoots it, and the momentum of the ball, it goes right through, and they win. It's a swish. And he said, you know what I was thinking? I said, I have no idea. What were you thinking at that moment? He said, when I was 6 years old, my friend and I would ride our bicycle, and we would throw rocks at a telephone pole, and we could never hit it. The rocks would always pass in front. So we learned we had to throw it ahead, and it would swing around. He said, that's what I was thinking. And there was such an incredible intelligence in Kobe's eyes. And the other part of it was, he believed the impossible was possible. This guy never doubted that he would make that shot. He believed it. And as I was animating Fei, thinking about her, or directing her, I thought, this is the same character. This is Kobe and Fei. They're both like incredibly smart, and they believe the impossible is possible. It's just this wonderful gift of doing these two characters back to back.
Well, Glenn, I wish you were my dad. I just wish you were my dad. So we can talk about adoption papers later. But
I'm happy to do that.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to all the Critics' Choice members for hanging out here and for answering many of our questions. I'm sure we'll see you again along the way. Congratulations on the great film, and thank you all, and we'll see you soon.